So I went on a little side quest this year and actually started a second business. And starting the second business has been a way better process than starting my first business. Mostly because I've learned a lot in starting my first business in the 4 years that I've been running the copy studio. There are some key differences to what I did differently. So this episode is all about what I did differently and why, and what you might want to think about when you are planning for your business. Let's dive in. So when I started the copy studio, I will be honest, had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to be a business owner. I had just left teaching. I had just learned copywriting, and I didn't really have a clear focus. I didn't really know who I wanted to work with. I didn't really know what kinds of offers that I wanted to put out there. And so I kept changing offers. I kept changing the messaging and positioning like every 5 minutes. And I kept hiring coaches because I was like, this coach will know exactly how to fix all my problems. And really, in retrospect, I think what actually happened was hiring all of these people just confused me more because I felt like I had to keep adding more and more and more onto my plate. And I think one other thing that really stood out to me, which I have been now in year 3 going into year 4 have been heavily rectifying, is this idea of like, I try to create systems. When I started, I got Dubsado. I tried to build all of the systems behind my offer. But the problem was I didn't have clarity on what the offers even were, who I was working with, and how I wanted to work. There's a certain level of systems that really can't happen until after you've done some of the work and you've gotten some of the experience, because then you know what are the friction points, you know where do clients have questions, where do they need some extra support, and all of that. So I was trying to create systems for things that didn't even exist yet, and it just made it so I ended up having to systematize everything again. I think that another thing that when I started the copy studio was this waiting until I was ready. So I did a lot of marketing. I created the website. I got my email list ready. I did all of these things because I wanted to be ready to put my business out there to sell my copywriting services. Part of that actually made it harder to get clients because I was so focused on making the website really great and building all the systems. And it was like this idea that I could pre-package my business and then put it out there and everything was going to be perfect, versus what I did for the second business, which I will get into in a minute. And I will also tell you what the business is. But what I realized is you can't really have systems until you have clarity. So it doesn't make sense to build out like, what are your standard operating procedures? What are the automations that you need until you have actual clarity around the offer? And to be honest, I have actually removed a lot of the automation from my business and replaced them with templates because I find that it's a lot easier to just copy and paste from a Google Doc for me. That's a system that works well for me. And having to deal with the technology of a CRM that is automating everything, it hurts my brain and it actually takes me a long time. The other thing that I realized in these 4 years of business, sales is not a passive process. You can put all the marketing out there, but you have to talk to people. You have to build those relationships. There's no amount of like preparation and getting ready and beautiful marketing that is going to compensate for sales. It is a separate activity that needs to happen. And I think it took me a really long time to realize that. And even as a very introverted person, I definitely go through phases where I'm like, I don't have the capacity to people and I don't have the capacity to even do sales. But realizing sales is a very important piece of your business. And if you're just waiting around for people to come to you, you're not going to be as successful as you can be. Finally, and this has been my lesson of the last year, is really making things as simple as possible. I started the copy studio trying to have all the bells and whistles, doing all of the things, And actually, the more I simplify my business, the more success I see. The less like platforms I try to be on, the more success I see. The more like individual one-on-one conversations that I have, the more success that I see. I think we as business owners who are getting advice from a lot of different people and are seeing a lot of what other people are doing, it's hard to fall into this comparison trap and think, okay, oh, I need this and I need this and I need this. But really, when you come down to it, when you end up simplifying, you can do a lot less and you can do it a lot better. And that's going to go so much further than trying to do all of the things. So let's talk about the new business and what I did differently. So the new business is a pet sitting business. And it's funny because when I was a kid, I would watch people walk dogs and I would be like, oh my gosh, I kind of want to do that one day. This was a dream that I kind of forgot about, but not completely, because I was an animal science major in college. A lot of people don't know that, but I was an animal science major. I was kind of thinking about going to vet school, and then I really didn't want to go to school for 8 more years, and that is when I went into teaching, and then you know the story from there. So the second business, it's called Pawsies. If you are in Cambridge or Somerville, Massachusetts, let me know if you need a pet sitter. I've got your back. But I really went about this business very differently. And so the first thing I did, literally before I did anything for the business, before I made an email account for it, before I made business cards, I found clients. That was the very, very, very first thing that I did. I reached out to people that I knew. I reached out to people who I knew had pets. I knew who my ideal client was, which is people who live in my neighborhood who love their pets like little babies. Those are my ideal clients. And so where I started wasn't with marketing, it was with sales. Where I started was actually just talking to people. And I wasn't sitting there trying to test out different headlines on my website. I still don't even have a website. I just went out and talked to people. And so this is where it was completely opposite from the copy studio, where I really procrastinated on talking to people. This was complete opposite. After I had at least one client, they were ready. They were like, yes, let's do this. You can walk my dog. That's when I was like, all right, this is a viable offer. I can do this. There's a need for this and I'm tapping into it. So I sat down and thought about what is the simplest way that I can make this happen. Not the most fancy way, not the most professional way. What is the most simple way? I have a lot on my plate. I already run one business. I want to go outside and walk dogs and pet people's cats. So what is the most easy way that I can do this? First, I got insurance. Pet insurance, super important. I want to make sure I am legally protected. I got my CPR and first aid for cats and dogs. Great class if you have pets. Highly recommend you knowing what to do in an emergency. I created a bank account. Also important, separate your business finances from your personal finances. I know this is like super intriguing stuff, but that's kind of the point, is that starting a business actually is pretty boring when you're just doing the simplest version, but that's what's going to allow it to be successful. I also created a spreadsheet where I put all of the stuff that I need to kind of keep track of. And then the final piece was I invested in a CRM for pet sitting. And this technically wasn't the simplest way. The simplest way would have been like collect money on Venmo and just make calendar invites. But I felt like that was going to be more complicated for me, and I wanted my clients to be able to just book automatically. And so I did invest in a CRM. That was like the only fancy thing I invested in. So I didn't build all of these systems for what I want this business to be in 5 years from now. I built the system for what is it that I need right now. And I got all of the things ready, like the contract, the intake form, all of that fun stuff. But because I was doing it the simplest way possible, it actually didn't take that long to set this business up. And once I had the clients, and once I then had the systems in place, that is when I started to think about marketing, because as a copywriter, I have an itch to like create this like beautiful pet sitting website with a blog with all of this information about how to best care for your pets. But in reality, for where this business is right now, because I just started it a month ago, I don't need any of that stuff. I don't even have a website. I don't have an email list for it. Literally, all I did for this is create business cards, and I am handing them out to people that I know. And so I think this is a trap that I see a lot, and a trap that I fell into with my copywriting business is this idea that you have to create all of this content, email all of the time, do all of the things. And yes, those things make sense, but it's not the end all be all. And it's actually not what comes first. What comes first is the sales and the systems. It's interesting because I really spent the past 9 months simplifying everything in the copy studio. So when I started Pausies, I just started with the basics, and I know that, you know, if I so choose to grow this business, that there's a lot of different things that I can do. I can create my website, I can create an email marketing list, I can go and become affiliate partners with a bunch of pet care products and businesses. There's a lot that I can do, but the main point of the business is actually pet sitting. And so for me, in starting this second business, and what I would have done if I had started the copywriting business all over again, is focusing on only what you actually need at this moment. You can develop the fancy, complicated systems later. Right now, what do you actually need in your business to make it work? And if you are like, oh my gosh, I feel like my business is super overcomplicated, I feel you. As somebody who has a lot of ideas, I really struggle with keeping things simple. Like I always want to do more. So what I've really learned from being in business for 4 years is how to simplify what is actually super important, and collecting data around that. Where am I actually getting clients from? Maybe I don't need to be on LinkedIn all the time. Maybe I don't need to be on Instagram all the time. Where am I actually making those connections, where I'm having actual conversations with people, where I am actually making sales? And so it's cool to see like, oh, this second business felt so much easier, even though it's a really, really different type of business, even though like the marketing strategy for a local business is going to be very different from an online business. There was a lot of things that I took from the copy studio into launching this second business. So if you're feeling overwhelmed in business, or if you're listening to this and you're thinking about starting a new business, then just take stock. Where can you simplify? Where can you talk to people? What actually makes sense in your business? And maybe you don't need all of the bells and whistles. Like maybe you just need to actually do less and do less better. So in my new business, and I will keep you all posted, I still don't have a website. Eventually, I totally want to create a website. But right now, I am focused on building a solid base of clients, and that's enough. I don't actually need a website to build relationships in my neighborhood. And so for the copy studio and copy classroom, with this simplification and streamlining everything, it's really what has given me the space to start Pausies, which is pretty exciting because I really, really love meeting people's animals and spending time with animals. So that is what I did differently for my second business. Thank you so much for listening. If this was helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and join the email list so that you know what else is going on. Thanks again, and until next time.